Good evening and back at it here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Good evening if you're joining us live via the stream, which you can always catch us YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. We stream live at 9 p.m. Tuesdays with the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. A Kansas City football podcast featuring one Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. He is here. He claims that shirt is red. I don't know. Or excuse me, claims it's orange. I see red. I'm not sure what it is.
You see red all the time.
Is Jeff, is he becoming a fan? Is that what we're watching here? Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, the VP of R&D, rocking an obvious Chiefs garb right there. Eric, how are you, my friend?
Doing great. Man, last week's games kind of stunk other than the Chiefs.
Right.
But this week's games promise to be good.
Yeah, let's start right there, by the way. Can we drop Super Wildcard? Because it certainly didn't. Calling it Super Wildcard, Jeff, did not make the Wildcard games any better. Chiefs, hey, if you're a fan of the team that kicked ass, you loved it. You're a Rams fan, you loved it. The Bills loved it. Chiefs loved it. Overall quality of games, terrible. Terrible. Yeah. Can we drop Super Wildcard?
Yeah. Well, this is the end result of a 17-game schedule with a 7-team playoffs seeding situation in both conferences. At some point, you're going to have beat up teams that aren't very good playing in the postseason. And yeah, it's all fun and it's great to get hyped up about it. But when you actually see the product on the field, like Eric said, it was pretty disappointing except for a couple games.
Yeah. All right. Let's start, though, with what did happen, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs thumping the Pittsburgh Steelers. Eric, let's start with you. What do we think here? More about Pittsburgh, more about the Chiefs overall, the way that game went?
I've been saying this the whole year. I think Pittsburgh stinks. That certainly is not. That certainly came to fruition. I mean, Big Ben had 22 yards passing in the first half of the game. I think some of that was aided by drops. We had Mike Hughes lose a few reps to Deontay Johnson, but Deontay Johnson just not be able to hang on to the ball. So I do think some of it was Pittsburgh, but I mean, not just any quarterback can throw 5 touchdowns in 10 minutes of football. So I do think there were some encouraging things. Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman, obviously Jerick McKinnon offered some juice, aside from Hill and Kelsey. And I also think Kelsey looked great. I thought, it was one of the first time, he's had a good year. Let's not be, let's not mince it a little bit, but like he hasn't been as dominant as previous seasons, and he looked every bit like the Travis Kelce we all know and expect against Pittsburgh. So that was encouraging. So I think it's a little bit of both. And I think with all the teams that won Wild Card Weekend against inferior opponents, I think the answer is it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. How about you? More Steelers, more Chiefs when it comes right down to it, Jeff?
I think Eric's right. I think it was a really bad Steelers team that shouldn't have been in the postseason playing against a Chiefs team that was playing at a very high level. And, at least for the last 3 quarters. The first quarter was a little bit of a mystery. They started slow. And maybe that's because they expected to win the game. Let's face it. I mean, this was not the best opponent in the world they were going to take on. And after TJ Watt scored that touchdown, it's when they hit the overdrive button, got it going. But again, Pittsburgh's so bad, and it was just hard to watch them. Matter of fact, I stopped watching at halftime just because after we did our podcast, because it was just they shouldn't have been in the postseason. And they had to do some things to make it interesting. They changed up some coverages and gave the Chiefs some different looks, more single high stuff, more man coverage. And you saw they were slow. They couldn't keep up, and it was just a bloodbath.
Yeah, it was. And, the defense has played well in 2 of the last 5 games. Both of them are against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But did you come away with this thinking the defense is fixed, Eric, that there's a reason to believe that they're getting back to that midseason form?
No, I think, again, I think the biggest thing was that they tackled people. Like, Najee Harris is not, a guy that is easy to tackle. They brought him down. In open field, you didn't get a whole lot of Steelers players making plays, after first contact. And that's really what's going to be expected of the Chiefs. That's what's expected of them basically the whole time. They need to make the tackles in front of them. I don't think they're brilliant, but in the second half of the season when they they played good football. That's what they did. They made tackles and they did that on Sunday night. But it's hard to untangle how bad the Steelers are from the Chiefs' defensive performance. And the thing is even with the pass rush, it's hard to even get mad that the pass rush wasn't particularly violent because Pittsburgh Steelers get rid of the ball in under 2.2 seconds, right? So it's almost impossible to get a pass rush when an offense does that. You're not going to see that with Buffalo this week. And as such, the probability for big plays is going to be higher, but the necessity for a pass rush is going to be bigger. Soren, making me what did I compare this to on Thursday? Or Sunday? It was actually Sunday.
I don't know. What did you compare it to?
So I'm like the quarterback. I'm Jameis Winston training, and you're I'm trying to drop back to throw, and you're hitting me with the bag.
I'm hitting you with if people are catching us via the podcast, first of all, thank you for joining us. You can catch us on, like we said, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and on Twitter, but you can comment on the other three live. And so I'm pumping up some of the comments. Red Tuesday, Jeff is such a homer.
That's right. I had to bust it out.
And you're the worst with pressure, Eager. You'd make it, no wonder you played tight end, and we're a blocking tight end at that, because anything gets thrown at you, you're in shambles.
I've never said that I was a good football player, Stren. I just said that I was a football player. Don't you cannot hurt me by making fun of my playing days.
Your eyes get diverted to the rush immediately. Right? Aaron calling you Iggy. That was short after we had Grunhard on, and Grunhard.
I heard that part of your show.
Yeah. So
I've never heard that use.
Do you have a nickname, Eric?
Eags was the one that I had.
Okay.
EAGS seems like a reasonable one.
Or not very creative.
Yeah.
Just take the E and the R off and add an S. Huh?
The math guy. That's what it is. How about you, Jeff? I mean, where do you sit on this defense right now? Like I said, three games they've given up big numbers. Pittsburgh and Ryland's talking about, like you said, Deontay Dropson, right? The Steelers gave him a little bit of help, but it was a dominant performance in the first half against a bad Pittsburgh Steelers team. How optimistic should Chiefs fans be that they can, present a really good game against the Buffalo Bills?
Well, they'll play well against the Bills. I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue because it's a playoff game. They're trying to reach a Super Bowl. They have a lot of reasons to play well. The Steelers, it's just a bad game to evaluate all across the board. I mean, at this defensively, they played great, but you're talking about a quarterback who can't throw the football more than 20 yards down the field. You're talking about a running back who's got no kind of explosiveness or quickness. You're talking about a receiver, as one of our viewers just noted, can't catch the football, hold on to it. Right. Every time he plays the Chiefs, he's freaked out touching the football. And so I think they did what they had to do. When you play an inferior opponent, you want to beat them up. That's what they did. That's what's encouraging about it. If you want to go back to the previous games, Buffalo presents a lot of problems that are very similar to what Cincinnati presented in terms of depth of talent and receivers. And they also present a dimension that Drew Lock was able to offer in that game, which is a running quarterback who could take advantage of breakdowns in coverage. You give them lanes to run. And so they didn't see any of that kind of stuff on Sunday night. And so that's really the big question for this defense. Can they deal with those kinds of elements when they see Buffalo?
Yeah, Cam Dog, the defense looks great against a beer league softball quarterback, right? Josh Allen, Ben Roethlisberger. Young Ben Roethlisberger resembled Josh Allen, not the fleet of foot, but the stand tall in the pocket, big physical kind of guy that's, kind of a shell of himself. But it is a great point. And I think, listen, it figures to be a great game. The defense can't stop them. This is what we've talked about for a while. You can't just get blown up, get your doors blown out. But the 38-20, and we'll get more into what happened in the last game here in a little bit. The 38-20 was a lot because of 4 turnovers. It was, again, a -4 day in the turnover department for the Chiefs. 0 takeaways, 4 turnovers. That really did contribute largely to them and kept Patrick Mahomes from being on the field. I found it amazing. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, and you noted this today, Jeff, and we talked about it throughout the week. I think it was 10.5 minutes, 5 touchdown passes, and 10.5 minutes of real game time, right? That includes the time the Steelers had the ball. Like, that is phenomenal. And two of the first few calls I got this week on Monday were one about stupid penalties. The Chiefs had 3 penalties for 25 yards. And two, the Chiefs cornerbacks are too handsy, right? Patrick Mahomes is officially taken for granted in this town because that is the kind of performance that you drooled over for most of 50 years in this town. You know, we saw Alex Smith have moments, and Trent Green obviously had some big games when that offense was firing around. But, like, this was superhuman. So there are 2 ways the Chiefs can win. 1, just a good all-around game. But 2, they can. I think, do you believe with this performance by Patrick Mahomes, win a boat race again if they need to win a game the way they were winning games in 2018?
Well, again, going back to the opponent, to answer your first question, yeah, I think people take it for granted because he's been so great for so long, such a high level. But I also feel like we all went into this game feeling like they were going to kill Pittsburgh. And so the numbers that he put up aren't surprising by any stretch, right? It's not like he was doing against, whatever, the 85 Bears. And so that alone is going to always create the sense that, okay, well, we expected this. There's nothing shocking about it. And so, yeah, he does suffer by comparison. But even more so, do I think that they can win a boat race? I think they're better off not getting into a boat race, to be honest with you, because that was the problem in the first half of the season for the Chiefs, that they were trying so hard to do what they've always done, being a big play offense, scoring a bunch of points, that they were putting a lot of pressure on themselves. And that was leading to a lot of turnovers. And so this is going to be the first game they played in a long time. The Bengals a little bit, but the Bengals trailed in that game in the first half, so it was a different dynamic in play. This is the first team they're going to play in a long time that can really stress them offensively, that could really go out there and if they start slow, could be up 14-0 or 17-0 or 21-0 in a heartbeat. And so I think it's more imperative that the Chiefs are able to do what they've been doing, which is be patient, take the long way, take what the defense gives you, don't turn the ball over, and basically shorten the game. Because in this kind of game, Buffalo is the one coming in with the better capacity to really light you up.
Yeah, it takes 2 to tango in a boat race, right? If it's going to get that way, it means Buffalo's having to play back at them. But I think Jeff makes a great point. You know, the Chiefs did feel like, hey, we'll just go whenever we need to go. And that maybe was part of their problem. Why did it work so well against Pittsburgh? Why did it look so 2018-esque against Pittsburgh? Beyond just the obvious that the Steelers defense is a 20-something defense, right? Well, they had to – you still have to do things. Like Minka Fitzpatrick can play. Cam Hayward can play. TJ Watt can play. There are guys out there that can do things that they still just ran up and down the field. Why, Eric? What clicked in your mind?
Well, I think it's the big plays, right? I mean – I posted this on Twitter today. Jerick McKinnon has carried the ball 24 times this year, including the playoffs. He has 5 runs of 10 yards or more. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has 9 runs this entire season of 10 yards or more on 119 carries. Darrell Williams has something like, I believe, 12 on 150 carries. It was revolutionary to see a running back pick up big plays on the ground. And then he also picked it up through the air. And we've seen Darrell Williams do that, but not in the explosive fashion that Jerick McKinnon did. We saw the catch and run. So we remember the Kelsey. Actually, we don't, because we were on air when that almost on air when that happened. But we remember the Kelsey long touchdown on 3rd and 20. But we also, in one of those drives, when he ran that crossing route and Mahomes hit him and he turned the corner, like we remember Travis Kelce being able to do. The big plays were there, right? And I think when this offense can't generate big plays, and there was like a 6-week stretch this year, Patrick Mahomes had what we call 4 big-time throws Sunday, which was, I believe, his high for the last like 3 months. And when the Chiefs offense couldn't produce big plays this year, it was depending upon not dropping balls, not missing blocks, the running back making the right read. And like no offense is going to be perfect in those circumstances. And when it can produce big plays, it just covers a lot of the mistakes that they'll inevitably make. And it sort of papers over them nicely. And so they just made big plays Sunday. And I think your Buffalo defense can be had in a similar way. Even though it is a better unit, I still think, if if they have the explosive plays from the explosive players that they're playing now, they can do it.
You mentioned Jerick McKinnon, 12 carries, 61 yards, 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. And a lot of people feeling, the way we're seeing here in the chat room, Jayhawk Jack. So McKinnon looked good, but all running backs do against the Steelers. Also, he said, right, but the Steelers had among the worst run defense. Other people, though, why did it take so long for McKinnon to play? From Terry, the judge said McKinnon is the hot hand, got to stick with him. Temecula Hound Dog, good to hear from you, buddies. Regular. Keep McKinnon at RB-1, agreed. Listen, Spencer Ware had a monster fantasy day, like in this offense. Niall Davis had some moments in this offense. I like Jerick McKinnon, Jeff. I think he's a good back. I think his problem has been health. I think he's always had an explosive bounce in his step and a good feel for where to go with the football, but not staying healthy. Now, listen, all you need him to do is stay healthy for 3 more games. And if he is healthy, is he the best running back on this team, and should he be the lead guy?
No. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the best running back on the team. And that's why when he's healthy, they'll put him back in and he'll play most of the reps. Jerick McKinnon had a great day. You don't want to take anything away from him. He gave them an element they have not had all season with his quickness, his explosiveness. I do think part of it is the team he was playing against. A lot of it was circumstance. There was no Darrell Williams, or at least he couldn't play most of that game. He's still banged up with that toe injury, and no Edwards-Helaire. And so he got his opportunity, but you certainly look at the history of Andy Reid with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When he's been healthy, they put him back in the game. Yeah. And so is that right or wrong? I don't know. I suspect, one, you're talking about a Steelers defense that probably had not prepared for McKinnon. 2, I think they call plays differently depending on who the back is in the game. And so they ran stuff that worked for McKinnon, just as when McCole Hardman was playing in place of Tyreek Hill, he gets a 100-yard day because they're calling different plays. But at the end of the day, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, they're not calling enough plays for the running backs for everybody to get great run. And so if Darrell Williams is healthy, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is healthy, Jerick McKinnon is healthy, chances are pretty good McKinnon's not going to get a lot of run.
Jeff, you kind of reminded me of that movie that just came out called Don't Look Up. That was a very Don't Look Up kind of like defense of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We've seen over the past 2 years.
Yeah. I'm curious because you started out by saying no, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the best running back on the team, but then it sounded like your point was they think he's the best running back on this team.
Yeah, they think he's the best running back. I'm not saying he is the best running back. They think he's the best running back.
And
what do you think?
Yeah. You know what? I want to see a bigger sample size from Jerick McKinnon. I'm not going to say one game versus whatever the 18 and 20 Edwards-Helaire plays is a huge difference for me. I just think McKinnon brings a different element to it. And he has been banged up. If he was that special, they would have played him a lot earlier. So something's going on here where again, I think it's more the way they game plan for it. I think the way they view Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think they can do more things with him. But I think when they have certain players in certain positions, this staff is very good at making the most of what they can do. What he can do against Buffalo may be totally different. It may not be anywhere near as effective as it was against Pittsburgh.
See, I think the thing about the running back position is that talent is not always pure talent is not always. It's not a one-to-one reflection in the production function, right? Like you could put Saquon Barkley in an offense and not get the same output, or even I even think like back in the day when Adrian Peterson was doing the thing. Yeah, and there's also this. I actually like
this just for people who are catching us on the pod later on. I mean, Pig One said they also thought Sorensen was the better safety. So just because they think something doesn't necessarily mean they're right, they're in the get it right business. They're knowledgeable people. I don't want to trivialize, but I mean they did blow it with Dan Sorensen early in the year. It is conceivable that they've left the better running back on the sideline as well. In this situation, right? Eric?
But I actually don't think it's that hard to discern why they left him on the bench this long. In Minnesota, he had never carried the ball more than like 160 times in the season. Then he went to San Francisco and he spent 2 years injured with knee injuries. didn't play a game in 2 years with the San Francisco 49ers. And then in 2020, he got some run as their number one running back, but got hurt. And it was one of those, and there were even games where the Niners sat him down as a rest thing. Like, it wasn't like he had like an injury or anything. They sat him down for rest. This might be a situation where Andy just said, look, like, we know that McKinnon has talent, and, they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and, this is just a thing where they didn't put him in maybe until they absolutely had to. But now, now it's just one of those things where they don't really care about his workload right now, right? They got to go full speed ahead to the Super Bowl, and maybe he's going to get the full-time touches there. We've seen them go, since Kareem Hunt left, we've seen them go with the hot hand, right? When Kareem Hunt left, it was supposed to be Spencer Ware, and then Damian Williams basically took that spot because Spencer Ware was kind of injured, and then also Damian Williams just outperformed him. But then in the preseason of 2019, Buffalo cuts LaShawn McCoy, and LaShawn McCoy comes in. And LaShawn McCoy, people forget because he was inactive for the Super Bowl and all that. LaShawn McCoy led the Chiefs in he led the Chiefs in yards per carry.
Is that the word you're looking for?
He started 9 games that year. He averaged 4.6 yards a carry. He got over 100 carries for Andy Reid. And then eventually Damian Williams threw a nice little run against the Vikings, and then a nice little run against the Chargers, and a great postseason. He unseated him. And then, and I think that Andy Reid has not had a huge problem going with the hot hand. What Jeff's saying is absolutely true, though, is when it is the commitment to Edwards-Helaire is more from the front office, as well as, the draft capital and things like that. It's going to make it less likely for him to go back and forth between running backs, but he's shown a propensity to.
I think, and that's now I wanted to put the judge's comment up there again, because Damian Williams was an example of Andy Reid riding the hot hand, right? Like you said, Damian Williams wasn't the guy all through that year. He was third in line. But at that time, now injuries help, a cut and, cutting a guy and injuries help precipitate that. But that to me is like the one thing that's undeniable. We've talked about this before. I had a scout tell me on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is one of the reasons why I was really excited about him, that as a receiver, he was the second best receiving running back the guy had graded behind Christian McCaffrey. He said, now let me be clear, he's not Christian McCaffrey. He said, but he's a really good receiver. We've all been waiting for that. We haven't seen it. We saw it, 6 for 81 and a touch. Like, he has been the most effective. Darrell Williams has been very effective as well. McKinnon is the kind of guy that looks like home run effective, right? Like, we know Darrell does a good job on picking up the blitz and moving the chains. McKinnon looks like there's a big play waiting to happen out of that backfield. Oh, and he can also just take the handoff and run. So to me, he gives you the most diverse individual to put back there. And they also like his blocking. So it's not like it's like, well, just blitz him and you can freight train him to the quarterback. The word is he's a pretty good blocker. I haven't seen enough to tell you he, is Jamal Charles sticking his nose in there yet. But, if he's that guy, then doesn't he sound like the most complete back they've got, Jeff?
Well, again, I go back to what percentage of the offense are they going to run through the running back position? And we've had the same conversation with Edwards-Helaire, to a certain degree with Darrell Williams. There's just not enough touches in that position for it to really be that big of a debate. The ball's going to Tyreek Hill. It's going to Travis Kelce first and foremost, and probably 60% of the time. And so a guy in that position is probably going to get about 20% of the opportunity to touch the football. And so, again, they're not, from what I've seen and what we've all seen from this offense, they're never going to just line up and be like Tennessee with Derrick Henry. You're in the game 95% of the time. You're getting all these opportunities. It's going to be based on packages. It's going to be on opportunities. And I just don't think Jerick McKinnon is going to have the kind of game he had against Pittsburgh at any other time in this postseason. I just think it was more circumstantial.
He did have 18 touches out of 65 offensive snaps. He was the guy that touched the ball the most. Now, that's inherent in being the running back when they just hand it.
There's nobody else.
Yeah, right? Like, you're the guy. But I think I get what you're saying. The focal point and the big plays are still going to come from them. But, you need the third leading scorer. And he looks like, I'm not trying to build him up. I'm just trying to find out if he's the best guy on this team right now, I know the fans think that's the case. And, I don't understand, like, how many years do you have to wait, Eric, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to figure it out in the passing game, or for Andy to figure out how to use him in the passing game when, hasn't been used all year? Jerick McKinnon can pop in and look better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire has at any point over 2 years.
And that's the point of and again, I don't want to go 12 rounds on Drake taking a running back in the first round, but my thing is this is why it's hard to make that level of investment at the position, because I believe, as you guys do, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire has talent. My belief in, like, my running back opinion is that the output of a running back is not all that sensitive to differences in talent. Like, I think it's sensitive to differences in type, right? It's sensitive to differences in situation, and it's a position where it's strange, right? Because we think about the importance of the running back declines the older you get. When you're a young player, the best player on the team is the running back. You just give him the ball because kids can't pass. And then, like, every single year, college football, the best players are oftentimes running backs. And then you get to the NFL, and it's a position where guys get hot and cold, and guys have their streaks. And I think that's okay, and that's a good thing if you sort of have Damian Williams like that. And we joke about this, but like the running back with low self-esteem. You think Jerick McKinnon wasn't geeked out about getting a freaking start for the first time, or maybe the fifth time in the last 5 years? Really is that was what represented for him. Whereas, when you give somebody the draft pedigree, you have to sort of shoehorn him those plays. And again, it leaves some of this sort of exoticness out of the offense. Yeah. And so to me, I think that's again one of the reasons why they back themselves into a corner. Now, if Andy goes pragmatic with it and says, look, Jerick's the hot hand, he's the running back until he's not, and we're gonna, and if Clyde's healthy, you said on your show, I think it was yesterday, Petro, that you don't even think Clyde is healthy. I think it's sort of a smoke screen.
I think there's a chance. Sorry to interrupt you. I think there's a chance that they are sandbagging and they've decided he's done for the year, but they're going to run him out there, right? No contact, call him limited on Wednesday to burn reps and prep time on the other team. And then he's going to be a no-go when they really hit on Thursday, do a little bit more contact on Thursday. Friday, nobody's hitting much this time of year. But, yeah, I think it's entirely possible that they've decided it's not going to happen, that he gave it a go, and now it's all smoke screens. But I do want to say this. I mean, Travis says, I'm curious. Actually, I slipped. That was the wrong one. He's here, this one. I don't like this stuff, right? Like from Alexis. Clyde needs to go. Been over him since last year. Eric said, the scary thing is we're having to find out about our running back in the playoffs, right? Like, it's not scary because all these guys were on the team. Like, stop that. One guy is the hero and another guy is the villain. Yes, Eric is right. I agree. The industry agrees for the most part. Don't take running backs that high. You don't need to, because you can find guys that can do the same thing. We're talking about that. And so as you move forward, if you think you need a running back, don't take him in the first round. Okay. But the idea is not that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is this dismal, horrible player that should be cut. The reality is the Chiefs have needed all of these running backs, right? They have got here using Clyde Edwards-Helaire, then using Darrell Williams, and then using Jerick McKinnon. And just as Jeff said, we had a parade and hung a banner in this town as they ran Kareem Hunt, and he embarrassed the franchise and lied to the head coach. They said, you're out. And then they had two more guys that were there. Listen, I don't like the capital that they spent, but at the end of the day, they have needed running backs to perform, and they've had three different guys have quality performances. That, at the end of the day, is what you need. Credit the front office on having talented players, and credit Andy Reid for being able to get, production out of them. Yes, as long as he carries that first round and plays for the Chiefs, and he's a first-round pick, we're going to say, how do you get more out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire? But right now, for the playoffs and winning games, they have a combination of guys that can get the job done. That's the most important part, isn't it, Jeff?
It is, but going back to what Eric said about just the commitment you make to a first-round pick, and it's not just financial. There's certainly a confidence aspect to this, and I'm sure they're in the business of trying to make sure he stays confident in who he is. I mean, I'm sure he can hear and see what's being said about him, and he understands that he's been banged up and he has had stretches here he didn't play well. I'm sure they're trying to do whatever they can to make sure his head stays in it, which also affects the amount of run he gets and the amount of opportunities he gets. When Le'Veon Bell came in here last year, they made a point of saying he's our lead back. And there was a lot of, and obviously Le'Veon Bell didn't produce, but there was a lot of discussion about how he was going to help the offense and what he was going to do. And I remember Bieniemy very vividly saying, Clyde is our guy. There's no question about it. And so I still think that's very much a part of their mindset. And they can, look, I forget who said it on these posts, but yeah, it's the same issue as with Sorensen, same issue as with Ben Niemann. They have certain guys that they want to get out there. There's certain guys that they believe in that they're going to put out there no matter what the cost is because they see things in them that we cannot see. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean that it's going to make the offense better, but it's certainly how they do business.
Yeah, as Eric said, we don't want to go 12 rounds on the running back, but I want to get a couple of people's comments out here. Alexa said, you don't draft a running back round 1 to use 3 running backs. I agree, unless it goes wrong, and then you do what you have to do to win games. Yes, this was not plan A, but
this is the bed they've made. That's fine. Like, make the best. You can't remake decisions. Just make the best decision from here on out.
It's a sunk cost. They gave up too much for Frank Clark. They're paying him too much money. But at the end of the day, is it part of an equation that adds up to a championship? That's really all that matters. Every team has dead money, and not just dead cap money. They have a guy they drafted too high. They have a guy they paid too much money. That's the reality of it. Stop. You don't have to villainize every single move. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a piece of the puzzle. Overpriced when they got him, yes. But, I think this is the one. Travis makes a good point. So he plays to justify that it's, his pick basically is what he's getting at here. And I think that's the thing you have to remember if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't play Frank Clark. You can't play Clyde Edwards-Helaire because of the investment you made. You've got to play the best player. Coaches
Anthony Hitchens.
Yeah. Well, and Hitchens. Yeah. I mean, Nick Bolton over Hitchens. I mean, all those things like that coaches love to stand there and say like, well, it doesn't matter once you get in here and bull. It does matter because people don't like to look stupid. So I think that's the key. And that would be the fear if you see Clyde Edwards-Helaire run out there and have no production in the passing game. Then I think fans are right to say, what are you doing? You're just playing this guy so you don't look bad for the draft pick. And that's why I do think it is a key piece of the equation for the Chiefs going into this next game. Guys, 38-20 in week 5. How much of that game matters? There was no Chris Jones. There was no Charvarius Ward. Daniel Sorensen played 100% of the defensive snaps, and we know that was really kind of the final nail in his coffin when Dawson Knox beat him for the big play. But he played 100% of the snaps compared to Thornhill playing 44%. Anthony Hitchens played 82% of the snaps. Willie Gay played only 44%. He was just coming back at that time. Nick Bolton did play 75% of the snaps. Ben Niemann played even less than Gay, which surprised me when I look back at that. But I think it does speak to they were doing a lot of Hitchens and Bolton. Willie Gay on the field, Juan Thornhill on the field, Chris Jones on the field, Charvarius Ward. Now Rashad Fenton is a question mark with the back. That's a lot of firepower for that Chiefs defense, Jeff. Does that give you confidence that there ain't going to be – and the obvious that you don't expect the Chiefs to be -4 in the turnovers – there's a lot of reason to expect that the Bills are going to have a much harder time getting to 38 this time than they did last time, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a tougher game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I certainly feel like, to me, the personnel doesn't matter as much because the way Buffalo plays, they can create issues for you defensively that not just the Chiefs, but any team can struggle with. And you saw this with the Patriots. The thing about them, the way Josh Allen played against the Patriots is that, and you can say what you want to about whether the Patriots suck or not, or the Mac Jones, whatever. Bill Belichick is a pretty good defensive mind, one of the best in history. That defense was second in the league in scoring and points allowed. That defense has given Patrick Mahomes all kinds of issues throughout his career. Josh Allen went through it like a knife through hot butter. And so the way you're going to rattle Josh Allen, it's going to be one of two things. Either you're going to get him into a situation where he thinks it's a mano-a-mano matchup versus Patrick Mahomes, which is how he played last year in the AFC Championship game, that it was all on him to make all the plays, or you're going to confuse him. And so Chris Jones being out there, I guarantee he's going to be double teamed all day long. I think the bigger question in this game, and I know that the people watching right now heads are going to explode, is you may have to play Daniel Sorensen in this game more than you want to because of the presence of Devin Singletary and the running ability of Josh Allen. You're going to have somebody who can play in space, who can be in a hybrid role, and that can't be Nick Bolton. That can't be Anthony Hitchens. You're going to have somebody on the field who can operate like Daniel Sorensen operates.
I mean, can't that guy be Willie Gay?
Well, it could be, but if people are talking about him possibly spying Josh Allen, I don't know. Having Dawson Knox and having a true running game creates issues, and a quarterback who can run creates issues for the Chiefs that I don't know if they have solutions for.
Just for the record, I wanted to look back and see Patrick Mahomes against the Patriots, the days he's had: 254, 3-0, 236, 2-0, 283, 1-1, and 352, 4-2. Your point, 2 bad first halves when he played him the first time in 2018, no doubt. So yes, Josh Allen did blow up that version of the Patriots defense, which has been very good, which was one of the top couple of defenses in the NFL. And I get that, and I give Buffalo credit for that. I also give credit for Buffalo, crapping in their hat against Jacksonville. Eric, like, they are both teams, are they not?
The New England Patriots played the 21st most difficult schedule in the NFL this year. The Buffalo Bills played the 30th most difficult schedule in the NFL this year. There's more than meets the eye with Buffalo and that game against New England. I think familiarity was a big deal. And the fact that New England was if you go back and look at New England's wins, New England had a very impressive win against a banged up Titans team, a game that we throw out against the Bills, and ultimately, the Browns game. I mean, who are the Browns? I think the New England Patriots, much like most of the road teams in this past round of the playoffs, were just a pretender, right? And a pretender that won a game in Buffalo that, you throw the data out of that game because of the win and stuff like that. And again, not to take a lot away from Buffalo, Soren talks about, the Jacksonville game. I mean, they were behind at home to Atlanta at halftime in week 16. They were up 13-10 against the Jets in the later stages of that game in week 18. Now, I think, and I said this on the show today on 810, I think if you get Buffalo's best game, yeah. If you get both teams' best game, I do think Buffalo might be the better team because their defense has a higher end than the Chiefs, and their offense has a little bit less than the Chiefs at their very best. I think if you get both teams' average game, though, the Chiefs win. If you get both teams' worst game, the Chiefs win. And another thing about the matchup in Week 5 that we're not looking at is two of the Chiefs' best players were playing horrendously at the time. One of them was Tyrann Mathieu, who I think hasn't had the best season, but has had a solid down the stretch. And L'Jarius Sneed in that game, Buffalo went after him 6 times in coverage. They were 5 for 6 for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. A perfect passer rating throwing to L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed rushed the passer twice with no pressures. He's obviously playing a lot better now. At the time, he was having to cover for the fact that Charvarius Ward wasn't playing. Now, does Rashad Fenton not playing hurt them? I think so, but there's a chance he'll play. I also think Mike Hughes is better now than he was at the beginning of the season. Still not great, but better. And then you look at the pass rush the Chiefs got. They got 5 pressures from Frank Clark, and then no other Chief had more than 1 pressure. Jerron Reed was shut out. Alex Okafor was shut out. Melvin Ingram wasn't on the team at the time. I think this is going to look a little different. I'm not saying that means they're going to shut him out. They're going to hold him to 10 or even 17. But what I mean is they're not going to be a complete embarrassment the way they were on Sunday Night Football. And you combine that with not turning the ball over 4 times, I think it's a different story this time.
Jeff, you a couple of times you look pained.
I just don't. I think you play who you can play against. I think we can play the whole who the Chiefs beat game all day long as well. And so I don't want to diminish the Buffalo Bills. I think they're a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. They came in here, got a legitimate victory against the Chiefs the first time around. I hear what Eric's saying, but I also feel like after they lost to Tampa, the second half of that game, that team was down, 24 points, something like that, in the game, 20 points, the first half of that game, getting torn apart. And if you watch the second half of that game, Josh Allen led that team back, led him in overtime. Tom Brady makes a big touchdown pass, Bashar Perriman, and they lose. Ever since that point, that team has looked drastically different than the one that played against Jacksonville. I think that they will play their best coming in here. The Chiefs will play their best coming in here. I think that losing in the AFC title game was a painful experience for them, like it was for the Chiefs in 2018. I think that if you heard Josh Allen's interview after they beat the Patriots, which could have been a moment to, hey, take a big victory lap and talk about how great things are, all he said was, game's over. We're worried about Kansas City now. They've been waiting for this moment for a year. And so they look very locked in to me. And I think that they're not going to sit around and say, look, we killed this team the first time. I said it, I was on Darren Smith's show a few hours ago and said that the thing about the Chiefs that is a little bit scary to me is that they had a blast against Pittsburgh. It was fun. They were gimmick plays and Tyreek Hill dancing with the cheerleaders and all that stuff. But they hit a switch. You ain't hitting that switch against this team. You better come in from kickoff ready to play football because they're coming for blood. That's what I see.
They're coming for blood is more so than they were last year when the Chiefs beat them twice. I mean, is it?
I think it's different. I think it's different when you don't know what that moment is like. I think when they played in the regular season, I think that showed me how serious they were. We can talk about Chiefs turned the ball over too much or so-and-so wasn't there, Chris Jones wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. Patrick Mahomes was there. The offense was intact. And they got taken apart. And so that wasn't about like they were playing weak teams or whatever. That team, when they're playing at a high level, can give anybody fits.
Yeah, I think that's, to Eric's point, when they're playing at a high level. I agree. I think these are the two best teams that are going to play, right? I slightly ahead of Green Bay. I'll take these two as the best two teams in the NFL. So I think you're getting a Super Bowl caliber matchup in this game. And I think it figures to be a great game. And I think there's a lot on the line for Josh Allen. Like if it's Josh Allen, and I know it's early in his career, but Bengals kid, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the quarterback, LSU quarterback, Bengals. Joe Burrow. Thank you. Not for him because he hasn't gone up against Mahomes. He's already beat him once the regular season. Josh Allen's got to win against him. Like you look at it, like Patrick Mahomes 0-2 against Tom Brady and 7-0 against everybody else. And like you want to make a name, Josh Allen's got to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. He took a step. There's no doubt. And Joe Burrow, like if you're in Cincinnati, you're like, hell yeah, man. We got one against Mahomes. Mahomes 0-1 against our guy. And trust me, I think Mahomes will have that. He'll play him next year because they're going to match up as like finishers. So I think that stuff matters. And I think, for the history of the game and the mystique and just to kind of have it over somebody, right? Like what didn't Peyton Manning lost the first two against Brady and then he won the next three?
03, 04, and 05, Plummer beat him.
I know Peyton Manning is 2-3 or is 3-2 against Brady in the playoffs. Yeah. And I was thinking he lost the first two.
Yeah, it was 03 and 04, the game, the Marcus Pollard game where they reinvented illegal contact because of that game. I remember that one. Both of them were snowy. Both of them were I think the Patriots maybe weren't underdogs, but were not expected to win. But Soren, and Jeff, let's reset on expectations here. If the Chiefs lose to the Bills, like this, I want to sort of reset expectations. If the Chiefs lose to the Bills, is it embarrassing for the Chiefs?
No.
Because that's my opinion too. I think that's the kind of respect I have towards the Bills in this one. I kind of think this is the Niners and Cowboys of this generation in the AFC. I think these two teams will be in it and will be the teams that face each other for a while.
Yeah, and real quick, and that was my point. Like, is this the Manning and Brady? Are we watching the Manning and Brady
You could be. And so my point is, I think this is where, people in the chat are getting after Jeff. And I think that's, he's picking the Bills. Picking the Bills is a reasonable thing to do, right? Like it is a reasonable thing to do, but but as somebody who is trying to be an analyst and try to cover from all the bases, but somebody who's also a Chiefs fan, people picked the Bills last year as 3-point underdogs in Arrowhead. And the thing about it is, again, this is one of those situations where look, in 2013, for example, the Patriots came back from 24 points down and beat the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football. And then the Denver Broncos handled the Patriots at Mile High in the play. Like, the rematches almost never mimic the game that happened in the previous part of the season. And I think that what we learned as observers of the Chiefs, we know, and we watch Buffalo Bills games and we're saying, okay, this is the stuff that could happen, right? The Arizona Cardinals beat the Rams by multiple scores in week 5 this year. And then last night happened. Like, all these kinds of things factor into it. This is going to be a close game. This is going to be a game where the Chiefs have to play well. And this is going to be a game where if they don't play well, Buffalo's more than good enough to beat them. But make no mistake, the Chiefs are favored in this game, I think, because they're slightly better.
I do, Tre'Davious White is not going to play in this game, Jeff. That's the top, which is always going to be linked to the Chiefs because that's the pick that the Chiefs traded for Patrick Mahomes. One of the picks that they traded for Patrick Mahomes. Tremendous corner. How much does that? We've talked about who didn't play last time for the Chiefs, who was expected to play this time. Tre'Davious White did play last time. Does that make a difference in how this game goes down?
I think it's a big loss anytime you lose a Pro Bowl cornerback, and he could do some things within their defense. Like last time they played, he covered Travis Kelce a few times within some of their coverages. I mean, yeah, it matters. It's a big loss, but I also feel like the strength of that defense is on the back end with those two safeties. Mm-hmm. And Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are all pro safeties. And so they know how to – basically, it's like having two Tyrann Matthews back there. And so they don't
stink up front either. I mean, there's good players at all three levels.
No, exactly. But I'm saying, but against a team like the Chiefs, you need to have guys back there who are smart, who have range, who can tackle. Those guys, you saw the play Micah Hyde made against Mac Jones on that go route that he just came over and just took the ball away from Kendrick Bourne. They can make those kind of plays. And so, yeah, I think it's a big loss, and I'm sure the Chiefs will try to pick at that as they should. But I'm with Eric. I think that this game is going to be decided by 2 or 3 points. It's going to be decided by a big play or a big mistake here or there. Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier are smart enough to know how to play the guys, play the strengths of the guys who they put in there. For Tre'Davious White, like Dane Jackson, I think is the guy who's playing over there. They still have some other guys. They're pretty solid at corner all the way around. They've got good depth in the secondary. But go back to that first game, the ability to pressure Mahomes. I think Greg Rousseau got an interception on the goal line. They've drafted players up front specifically to deal with this team. And so the Boogie Bashams, the Greg Rousseaus, the Star Lotulele's coming back. Like, those are the guys you're going to have to get it done up front to really, it just a lot like the Chiefs. If Rashad Fitton isn't there, that puts more pressure on their pass rush to make things happen.
Let's mention Matt Milano. A lot of folks, my buddy Sal Capaccio, who works for WGR 55 in Buffalo and also does sidelines for the Bills. Matt Milano was a big topic as to why the Bills were going to win when I was talking to Sal. Remember, he didn't play in that first game. Be careful. I mean, talking that kind of thing is kind of the same thing about talking about Chris Jones didn't play in the first game. I mean, there's a little bit of that conversation going on the other direction here. But, yeah, Matt Milano had reached epic proportions by the time they got on the field and was supposed to be the difference. And, of course, it didn't end up going that way for them. How do you stop Josh Allen? Right, Eric, what is the way? 21 of 25, 308, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 6 carries for 66 yards. Man, the bitch of it is how he runs, right? The guy can throw. He's a horse. He's tough to bring down. He's got great balance. So it takes multiple people to bring him down. But anytime a quarterback can run, I mean, you ask any defensive coordinator, first question you ask, is the quarterback a threat to run? This guy is, and they're not afraid to run him. And while I think they ran him too much in the regular season, it don't matter now because it's win or go home. What do? Do you spy him? Is that the key? Is it, you decide you're going to take away one receiver? Because he spread around. Stefon Diggs is supposed to be the big guy, and he had 3 catches for 60 yards. It wasn't like he was the guy that was killing everybody. What is your path to stopping or slowing down at least the Bills' offense?
Yeah, Gabriel Davis is a big playmaker for them out of UCF. Dawson Knox is, I think, taking another step this year. Cole Beasley, I think, is at a down year, but usually he's a pretty good slot player. I think you have to be a disciplined pass rush, right? You can't get out of your lanes hoping for a sack. I do think that's one thing that Frank Clark's really good at, by the way. I think Frank Clark is a disciplined pass rusher. He doesn't open up lanes for other teams' quarterbacks to run very often, although we saw Drew Lock have a good game against them a couple weeks ago. It's simple stuff. It's Josh Allen suffers from a lot of the same stuff that Mahomes does, in that the best way to beat him is to make him beat you 15 times in a drive, 10 times in a drive. And we've seen that, when they played in both games in 2020, when you look at his longest throw in those games, they're not terribly long plays. I mean, 4.5 yards per pass attempt in that rain game. That was that Monday night game in 2020. And then in the AFC title game, it was just 6 yards per pass attempt. You have to make him try to pick you apart. 8.2 average depth of target. Last year, that was a yard less than his normal game, in the AFC title game. So I think, what are the ingredients there? I think it's just playing sound football. No balls over your head. And when the ball is caught in front of you, you make tackles.
I do want to mention Devin Singletary, because to me, he's been an important dynamic for the Buffalo Bills over the course of the year. When they as a team don't rush for 100 yards, they're 0-4. Now, a little bit of this is battery backwards, because I'm an adamant believer in you throw to win and you run when you're winning. And so I think the Bills do get out in front, and then they start handing up and piling up those yards. But I think it's noteworthy. 0-4 when they rush for less than 100 yards, 12-2 when they rush for more than 100 yards. Singletary's last 5 games, all Buffalo wins. He's averaged over 18 carries, just 81 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns in 5 games, couple of catches for 17 yards per game, and another touchdown. That's 8 touchdowns in 5 games and about 100 yards from scrimmage. And that is new, Jeff. That wasn't there. You were talking about that earlier. He only had 9 carries the first time. They didn't know, was it him? Was it Moss? And I believe there's something to be said for giving your quarterback a mental break, right? Like, just let him, especially when they ask Josh Allen to carry the ball 5 to 10 times a game as well. So much, he has to carry so much of that load. Just a chance to hand off and collect your thoughts, or get your win back after you've taken a shot. I mean, he's a big, tough guy and he gets up, but man, if you're still feeling the effects of the hit, being able to just hand off once and then kind of get yourself back together is not a bad thing to have. And that is new. That's a way that the Buffalo Bills are better this time than they were last time.
This has been the long-running debate that Eric and I have had about the Bills. I've complained all year long about they got to run the ball more. Not because they got to turn into the Tennessee Titans, but because, as you said, they have to give their quarterback a break, and they have to make him understand the importance of playing within the offense. Josh Allen's biggest weakness, and I think when he's played well, you haven't seen it, is that he tries to do too much. And that's part of that is because they created an offense that's built around him trying to do too much. And it's the same. Look at Arizona with Kyler Murray. Towards the end of the year, every play was like a take the snap, run around for 15 minutes, try to make a crazy throw across the field, line back up and do it again. At some point, that is not going to be an effective way of moving the football or scoring points. And so in the last 6 weeks of the season, you've seen Josh Allen become a lot steadier, a lot more comfortable with handing off, a lot more willing to understand the importance of how that run game can help his play action. And at the end of the day, this is a quarterback who wants to run to gain yards. Like, Mahomes wants to buy time, and he'll take the opportunities to run when they present themselves. But Josh Allen he's not Ben Roethlisberger. He's Cam Newton. He's a better version of Cam Newton because he can throw the football better. And so that just, again, that creates a dimension within an offense that's really hard to defend. And so by having Singletary there, it just makes his running that much more dangerous. It makes the downfield stuff that much more dangerous. And it also makes him a lot more comfortable. The last 6 weeks, he's had 2 bad games. Both have been in bad weather. Other than that, he's played pretty much lights out.
Well, and the weather's not supposed to be great, right? I was listening to, one of the PFF podcasts Eric does, the PFF forecast. And what was that? What were you guys saying? 25? I hadn't even looked that far ahead, but I was listening to it today. 25, temperatures maybe fall into like 20. And listen, I know he played brilliantly, but the knock on Josh Allen was that he sucks in bad weather.
He looked pretty good last week in bad.
I know.
Cold.
he debunked that, but his history has been that he's had some struggles in that. So I do think that's something that maybe plays a role. Listen, my theory on this is Josh Allen has a tendency to try to do too much when he gets down. And we've seen him do that against the Chiefs. And I think he came into games last year trying to do too much, right? Like I'm going to shoot it out with Patrick Mahomes. It's me versus Patrick, and I'm going to have a day. And he dug a hole for him. I think, listen, I would never say the Chiefs can't come back because I think they've got the best weapon to do it. But I think this is a game that the Kansas City Chiefs want to play from in front. I think what you saw last time where the turnovers killed them for sure, a bad penalty on Frank Clark for roughing the passer, which overturned an interception, which might have given them a chance to come back, might have. All contributed, but the Bills are a really good team, first and foremost. But I think if you play from in front for against Josh Allen, he tries to do too much. And I think, you see him avoiding the rush and not throwing it away, still trying to go back further and still find a guy. And he can have some big negative plays. Now, I think he's gotten better at that, but I think the negative plays by Josh Allen come when he tries to do too much. Is it vital that this team play from in front, Eric?
I think so. I mean, last year they got down 9-0, and I think, all of us kind of thought to ourselves, that's the one team they can't get down against. And ultimately they rattled off 21 straight. Funny, it was kind of a lot like what they did against Pittsburgh. I don't know. I would say that the hard part has been, other than this past week, the Chiefs have been really good. I tweeted out a graphic looking at like their expected points added, running and passing, first 15 plays. And they're the best team in the NFL, the first 15 plays of a game. They're better than Buffalo. They're better than Green Bay. They're better than Tampa. And it's sort of like that time we all did the Chargers game. It's that middle of the second quarter where they get in a lull, right? To me, it's not even so much about getting ahead. It's about being consistent on offense. Because I think, and I joke, Andy calling the good plays, but like Andy's got to call the good plays the whole game. And they have to keep the foot down. I obviously it's much better to get out ahead than it is not to, but I also think the sense of urgency has to be wall to wall in this game for the Chiefs offense. Because Josh Allen, while he doesn't, as you asked on the show today, he doesn't have a lot of great come from behind wins. In fact, Buffalo has been a front running team for basically the entire Josh Allen era. They do have that game against Tampa, as Jeff alluded to, where they came back and lost, but they did come back pretty well in that game. But this is a front-running team. But for the Chiefs, much like in that Chargers game, the reason that they were in the meat grinder against the Chargers is because they took their foot off the gas on offense. And so to me, it has to be wall-to-wall. This sounds silly. Does this feel like the AFC Championship game right now?
It does to me.
It does to me.
Super Bowl to me.
Because to me, I think if you're Andy, you got to treat this like the AFC Championship game. I don't think you hold anything back in this game.
I don't know how you hold anything back in a divisional game, in any playoff game, do you?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, I think
they have before.
I want to ask this because, Jeff said, I think it's a 2 or 3 point game either way, and you're talking that way. Other than against Tom Brady, and Tom Brady smoked him, but haven't the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes played one close game? Right?
I can't remember. What's a close game?
I mean, within a score at the end
of the last 18 playoff games in the NFL.
I mean, the playoffs or the regular overall?
In the playoffs, the only close game they've played is the AFC Championship game in 18, right?
Yeah.
They got pummeled by the Bucs. And lost the close game. Mahomes has won the 7
What
other
was
games he's
what was the
played.
Browns game? 5
The
points?
Cleveland game was close after Mahomes got injured. That was it. But that was a 3-score game.
If
before
Mahomes is
got hurt.
taking the snaps at the end of the game, they have not been within no one's been within a score, right?
Well,
Either
I mean,
they
but the
got
playoffs are that way, by
smoked.
the way. There's a stat out there. Maybe even Curtis Siebel was the one who tweeted this out. The last 18 playoff games in the NFL, there has not been one score change or lead change in the fourth quarter.
That's a problem. We can talk about that on Too Deep on Thursday. We know the first round was brutal.
Like
I
no
mean,
one's playing close games.
Yeah. So what's your point? What are you saying, Soren? What's the point? I don't understand the point.
My point is this, and looking through red and gold colored glasses, my point is, I think there's something to be said for, other than the Titans game. Like when you go back and I watched the Bills game again, the quick cut of the Bills game, the week 5 game again. And it's really bad what the Chiefs did to themselves. I mean, and there's to Eric's point about, the good plays, they would complete a pass for 8 yards and have 2nd and 2, run it for 1, and then run it for -2 and punt. And,
So, wait a minute, so that -2 was that they took a handoff and just fell down?
No, no, the Bills. But I think
Right.
to Eric's point about keep your foot on the gas, it means keep throwing it. I mean, I think that's what it means. Look, it's why I like Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon out of the backfield seems to be in a rhythm with Patrick Mahomes. I think, I feel like Andy Reid, and I've always said this, and I've asked Andy Reid this question a number of times, and he never really kind of takes the bait in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't confirm it. He doesn't deny it. He just starts talking about something else, right? But I've always felt like the team that wins the first matchup is at a disadvantage, right? Because the natural human instinct is to be thought of as being right. Like I think Andy Reid, when you see the look on Andy Reid's face when that Wildcat blew up is like, oh, mother, like I am pissed. Like, because he doesn't like to be wrong. No one likes to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think Andy Reid doesn't like to be second guessed. And I think he gets edgy. And when you have a game plan that works really well, and if you don't run that again and then you lose, you're a dumbass. And everybody's going to come at you in the post game. Why didn't you do this? You did this in the first game. It worked great. It didn't work. And when you lose, you're freed. And I think Andy Reid had 2 games where they had run the ball effectively the year before against the Bills. And I think that's what he was trying to do. Cover 2, we got to run it. They've got a light box. We're going to do it. And I think since then, I'd like to believe that Andy Reid and what we've seen of the passing offense here of late, and Mahomes, what is he now? 17 touchdowns and 1 interception over his last 6 games, is that they figured out how to throw against the cover 2, and they don't have to just hand off and say, well, that's what we always did. I don't think he has to be a slave to what worked the last 2 games, because the last game they got slapped. And I think in addition to the turnovers, I don't think it was a banner day for Andy Reid for the play calls. I think he'd be the first guy to say it. And anytime you give me two, and I like Brian Daboll, the guy, a lot, and I think he deserves a head coaching job, but Andy Reid versus Brian Daboll, I'll take Andy Reid. I mean, Andy Reid versus Leslie Frazier, I'll take Andy Reid, right? And I think Leslie Frazier's really good, but I'll take Andy Reid. I feel like we should expect Andy Reid to fix whatever he screwed up last time, shouldn't we?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, both teams are going to make adjustments. Again, that's what I'm saying. It's not going to be if it was the same game, it'd be the same result, right? I think we all expect it to be a different level of competitiveness in this game, given the circumstances, given the changes in personnel, given how both teams have grown over the course of the season, had to adjust. Speaking on Buffalo's behalf, here, I'll be the guy who speaks for Buffalo. I think when you look back to that game they had against New England, when they got beaten up pretty good in that first contest, and some reporter asked them a question, asked Micah Hyde and Poyer a question about being embarrassed. And I remember the response. I remember Poyer said, we're going to remember that, or Hyde said, we'll remember that. They were really indignant about it. That kind of stuff sticks with you over the course of a year. I think losing to Jacksonville sticks with you over the course of a year. I think I remember the Chiefs, when they went on their run in 2019, losing to the Titans was a huge turning point for them. And so oftentimes what we tend to do with teams like Kansas City or New England or teams that are really dominant is think, well, they're just always going to be dominant because of the talent.
Right.
And really, every championship team is a story in and of itself. The narrative gets written over the course of the season, and it gets written with a lot of setbacks and a lot of adversity. And so, in my mind, Buffalo has more to play for here. Buffalo is playing for respect. They're playing for inclusion. They're playing for legacies, as you said, with Josh Allen. They're playing for what happened last year.
I don't know. Didn't every opponent the Patriots ever faced, didn't they have all that too?
And they won. They won some of those. Joe Flacco had a nice run.
And Buck Fumble got him once.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Peyton Manning got a ring doing that.
Yeah,
That's part of it.
When you've got to win 3 or 4 in a row to get there, yes, you're likely to have somebody where the sun shines on a dog's ass and they have a day.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also so good that you can still beat a team when they have a day. And I do think both these teams are good enough to beat a team when things aren't going their way and they are going the other team's way. But
I'll put it to you guys this way, and this is what cuts down the crux of the matter. I'm not hating on the Chiefs here. I'm just speaking realistically. Bengals, Chargers, Ravens, Bills, and Titans. The Chiefs did not win one of those games, right?
Right.
And so why do I think in this game they're going to be able to handle an offense as good as this based on what we've seen all year long?
I mean, I think it's fair. They have not faced an offense at full strength with all its weapons that has good weapons and had a day on defense. But I would ask you, based upon 17 touchdowns and 1 interception for Patrick Mahomes coming down the stretch, what makes you think that Mahomes can't match them? That the Chiefs offense can't match them? I mean, isn't the Chiefs offense the more accomplished unit if we were to compare the two offenses? I mean, this is, to your point, and we've talked about this, we have a wager. What are we down to? Who do you have? I have the Chiefs because the Chargers.
I have the Bills. And the
No, you don't have the Bills. The Bills were a no-go. You had the Patriots.
Was it? They were?
Yeah, the Bills, we said, had a defense and a quarterback.
Oh, so Eric, you remember this. What was it now?
It was, you had the
Titans. I had the Titans still. Right?
You have the Titans. You had the
There's only 3 teams
Ravens,
left.
The Patriots, and there was a 4th team. I'll have to go back.
I thought you had the Chargers, right?
I did, yeah. All I've got's the Chiefs.
So the Titans are – I remember the bet.
Petro fell for the Chargers too.
Yeah, I felt for Herbert because I said it's going to come down to the best quarterback. And I said we're going to take the Bills out because they were the number 1 defense and they had Josh Allen. So they fit both of our narratives. So we said if the Bills win it, it's a no.
Yeah. Okay.
You got 4 teams and I got 2 teams. The Chargers sucked. My point to this, though, is this is a bit of a referendum on the defense, right? Like, if the Bills don't win, and I think I said this when they played the first time, and of course the Bills won, and we said, hey, and they had 4 takeaways, defense matters, right? And the Chiefs started playing better defense not long after that. Again, the better defense is the Bills. And if they don't win, what does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. I mean, it's like, I think what you're making is that the quarterback is what decides all this stuff, right? Is that what you're saying? I
mean, yeah, and just to underscore that the game has become an offensive game.
Yeah,
You can't be third. I don't think you can be 32nd. I mean, maybe you can. You can have some miraculous collection of things happen, but you can't be the worst defense. And I think the Chiefs are not going to allow 30 for 3 consecutive games and win a championship. The defense is going to have to show up.
Yeah. And so I think a better way to look at this game for me is not so much that way. I think this game will be about tempo, and it'll be about controlling tempo. And whichever team establishes that is going to have the upper hand in a game like this. It's not going to be a boat race because both teams are going to be able to play good enough defense to prevent that from happening. It's going to be a game of decisions. It's going to be a game of situations. And so when those quarterbacks and those defenses find themselves in those positions, that's when you're going to see how this game is going to go. And that's what makes this kind of game so special, because it's like a heavyweight boxing match. You know, you're going to have some rounds that one team's going to win. You have some rounds the other team's going to win. But ultimately, it's going to be judged on who isn't going for the knockout, but who gets enough shots in at the end of the day to get to the finish line. Mixing all these metaphors, by the way.
Nick is obviously a listener of Eager's PFF forecast, or at least Eager's segment with me on the program. KC has a better offense, and defense is largely a function of who you play against. I know that's one of the mantras that has been beaten, the drum that's been beaten loudly on the PFF forecast.
Eric saying that KC has a better offense and defense?
I'm saying that defensive performance is mostly an illusion of who you play against. I actually think Kansas City's offense and Buffalo's offense are similar. I don't like to me, I think you give the edge to Mahomes based upon a lot more than this year's data. But if you're just looking at this year's data, Buffalo, well, again, like I think they're closer than maybe a lot of Chiefs fans believe, but I'll give the slight edge to the Chiefs on offense.
I will say this, and this is where I come back to Buffalo in a tight game. I haven't seen a lot of Josh, and this has been my thing, and we'll talk about it on Too Deep with the Cowboys on Thursday when we do the NFL podcast. But, Dak Prescott, I mean, when it's time to go, there's always some kind of something that he doesn't get it done. I can't say that about Josh Allen yet because I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen him in position to go do it. They're usually pummeling somebody or in some kind of sloppy rock fight with the Jags, and it's just ugly. But, I mean, notice he didn't just raise the team up and go get it done. And generally speaking, Patrick Mahomes, unless he's getting pummeled by the Bucs, he either leaves the field having scored and watches Tom Brady then go do the same thing to him. And really, Brady's kind of the only guy that gets him, or he gets it done at the end. And I think that'll be the question about the two offenses. I think largely over the course of where the clock doesn't matter, they are really in different ways. They're similarly productive. But if this game does come down to the clock, and unless the Chiefs are on defense, then I think they'll screw it up and allow, Buffalo to drain the clock and then kick a field goal at the end like happened against the Bengals. I hope not. I hope they've learned from it. But if it comes down to which quarterback's going to take the ball with a minute 12 and one timeout and make it happen, all over Patrick Mahomes in that.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that's where the tempo comes into it. How you manage the game determines that, right? Like Cincinnati didn't just wind up in that position by just sheer good luck. I mean, they actually wound up there and said, okay, we're taking the ball. We're not giving it back to Mahomes.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. I think when you get in those situations, you have to cash in.
Yeah. Can Andy Reid stop that by either letting them score or by being more aggressive earlier and not find himself in that situation? I think that's a big question. All right, let's have it. Predictions. Let's get Jeff out of the way first. Jeff.
Why do you say such resignation?
Well, because the fans. Listen, I think picking Buffalo, I actually told a friend, I don't think we ever got to it on the air, but I will pick the Chiefs in every game because I think I think Patrick Mahomes gives you the best chance to win every game. I think they're as good as anybody out there, and so you might as well take the Chiefs. But I think I would not pick them to win the Super Bowl. I wouldn't pick anyone to win the Super Bowl because the odds are against everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so if I had to pick another team, I would pick the Bills. I do think if there's a team that feels like the 19 Chiefs, it's this year's Bills. And I'm not going to be shocked at all. And I will pick the Chiefs, not holding my nose. I'll go first. I'll take the Chiefs. The way they win is not in single. I think they get away from the Bills and they win 33-24. Will be my pick just because that's generally how their playoff games work. I don't have the 77 plays figured out in my head as to how it's going to go, but that's how it usually goes. So I'll take the Chiefs 33-24 and that they play from in front and Josh Allen has troubles, but I got no problem saying the Bills win. I think they're a hell of a team. Jeff?
I feel like if this game's played in the 30s, the Bills win.
Really?
Yeah. If it's played in the 20s, I think the Chiefs win. And I also think if it was the AFC Championship game, I'd pick the Chiefs. I'm taking the Bills. I'm taking Bills 34-31.
Okay, Bills 34-31. What did I say? I've even forgotten what I'd said. I said Chiefs
33-24.
33-24. That's such a stupid score. I hate the score, but that's kind of
Bucker's going to miss an extra point, which is how the Chiefs are hot that day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna 27-17. I think the Chiefs will win. I agree with Jeff.
Wow.
I think
10.
the game is going to be lower scoring, and it's going to favor Kansas City. So
you're on the under, right?
I am.
Is that what I understand? All
Yep.
right. There it is. I go 33-24 with the worst score predicted ever. Jeff will go Bills 34-31.
You guys are picking blowouts almost.
I'm just going with what usually happens in a KC game. Like if they're going, they're going. You know, if they lose, they're more likely to get hammered. They're more. I think a Bills win is much more likely to be 34-20. I mean, I think that 38-20 was not a coincidence. That's how they lose. They shoot themselves in the foot and then keep doing it.
Well,
they reload. They pop another magazine in there and fire again. Like they don't.
I think it's more like the Bengals game or the Chargers game.
Okay. It is, by the way, the same referee. Sean points it out. The guy Hussey, who was at the Bengals, called the Bengals game. Now, I think
that was Ron Torbert.
No, Hussey was involved in the game, wasn't he?
It was
That's
Ron
what I was
Torbert
hearing
that
today.
called the game at Paul Brown. I was there, Soren.
Are you sure?
Was it Ron Torbert?
I was told the guys today, I'm going off what I heard on the Zone today, our midday show, was saying that he was the same guy. Now, this
I'm going to pull up NFL Jesus here. Jesus is the way. That's how you got to know.
I have the game. You go into where do they show the refs? I usually don't.
Game book. You click on the game book.
I have the game book open.
The referee was Ronald Torbert, number 62 for that game.
For the Bengals?
Bengals week 17.
Okay.
Are we really going over the officials right now?
Look, Jeff.
We
bet real American dollars on these games.
Yeah.
Bet real American dollars on these
We're
games.
already setting up the argument the Chiefs lose, right?
Tolbert, Joseph
Appreciating
Tolbert was subbed in. He was a late sub. Because there was a COVID issue, is the word. I don't think they made that official. So he was removed for COVID, but it was his crew.
Okay. All right.
As I think
Judge's ruling, Petro's half right. I'm half right.
Yeah. Listen, I'm relying on others, which I don't usually like to do, but the point is his crew, and they are a very flag happy crew. And I don't think that bodes well for the Chiefs because their corners like to maul people. And they didn't handle it.
Well, don't maul people then.
I don't think they could.
I'm gonna go the other way and say that their game was a pretty big embarrassment and pretty public embarrassment. I think that they're going to be a little bit less so.
Yeah, I would tend to think. I would tend to think Andy Reid spent some time on the phone, and I think when Andy Reid calls the league office, they listen. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, there it is. There's our predictions. Don't forget, we'll be streaming live Thursday at 9 with our Too Deep podcast, TOODEP, TOODEEP. It is our NFL podcast. We do that Thursdays at 9 Central. If you want to catch the stream there, make sure you are following us on the Twitch, on the YouTube, the Facebook. You can get us in all those ways, and of course on Twitter as well. We'd love the likes, the thumbs up, the hearts. All those are great for us. We appreciate it. If you enjoy it, tell your friends to come out and check it out. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, where you can see his great work. My name is Soren Petro. You can catch me at 810WHB, 810WHB.com. Thanks for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.